I told my husband I was pregnant, and he panicked. "You ruined everything. I didn't want this child." That same night, he packed his things and left for his young colleague. His parents supported him. I was left alone. But years later, he came crawling back to me. I have been married to Chad for 4 years, together for 7. We had talked about having kids someday, but never put a firm timeline on it. I was on birth control, but about 3 months ago, I had that stomach bug that was going around. And well, antibiotics and birth control don't always play nice together. When I first missed my period, I didn't think much of it. My cycle has always been a bit irregular, especially when I'm stressed, and work had been particularly demanding. But when I started feeling nauseous in the mornings and noticed my breasts were unusually tender, I bought a pregnancy test on my lunch break. 2 pink lines. Clear as day. I took 3 more tests over the next 2 days. All positive. I was shocked, scared, but also excited. I know it wasn't planned, but once the initial surprise wore off, I started picturing our future as a family. I've always wanted to be a mom. And even though the timing wasn't perfect, I thought Chad would come around once he got past the initial shock. I waited a week to tell him, wanting to plan the perfect moment. I wasn't going to do anything elaborate like those Instagram announcements with letterboards and confetti. That's not us. Instead, I made his favorite dinner, lasagna with garlic bread, and bought a bottle of his favorite bourbon for him and sparkling cider for me. I even wore the blue dress he always compliments me on. I wanted it to be special, even if it wasn't planned. The whole time I was cooking, I kept rehearsing how I'd tell him. Should I just say it outright? Make a joke? I settled on something simple after dinner. I have some news that's going to change our lives. Chad came home around 7, later than usual. He seemed distracted, checking his phone constantly. Not unusual lately. He'd been working on a big project with his team. He barely noticed the nice dinner, just mumbled something about it looking good, and poured himself a generous glass of bourbon before I could even mention the special occasion. During dinner, he was quiet, responding with one-word answers when I tried to make conversation. I asked about his day, his project, anything to get a conversation flowing, but he just shrugged or gave minimal responses. Something felt off, but I chalked it up to work stress. After we finished eating, I took a deep breath and reached for his hand across the table. I remember my exact words. "Chad, I'm pregnant." The silence that followed felt like hours. His face went through a series of emotions. Blank, pale, then something I'd never seen before. Anger mixed with panic. When he finally spoke, he asked if I was joking. When I assured him I wasn't, that I'd taken 4 tests, things quickly spiraled. I'll never forget what he said next. "You ruined everything. I didn't want this child." I tried explaining that it was an accident, probably due to the antibiotics interfering with my birth control. I thought we could figure it out together, like we always had with other challenges. That's when he dropped the bomb that maybe he never wanted children at all. He claimed he only went along with my someday plans to keep me happy, but it was always just a hypothetical future to him. I asked if there was someone else, and his reaction told me everything before he even admitted it. When pressed, he finally confessed he'd been seeing Vanessa for a few months. Vanessa, his colleague he'd mentioned, was brilliant and bringing fresh ideas to the team. The one who was 24, 7 years younger than me. While I was still processing this double betrayal, Chad started packing. Not just an overnight bag, but a suitcase full of clothes and essentials. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My husband was literally walking out on me the same night I told him I was pregnant. When I asked where he was going, he admitted he was heading to Vanessa's place for now. Within 30 minutes of my pregnancy announcement, Chad was standing by our front door with his suitcase, telling me he'd come back for the rest of his stuff later. I asked him if he was seriously doing this, just walking out on his pregnant wife. His response? "I can't be a father. I'm not ready." I pointed out that no one is ever completely ready for parenthood, but that's not how life works. He just mumbled, "I'm sorry," and said he'd call in a few days. Then he was gone, just like that. I sat in our suddenly too quiet apartment, trying to process what had just happened. One minute I was announcing my pregnancy, and the next my husband was gone, off to his younger girlfriend's place, leaving me and our unborn child behind. I called my best friend Julie, sobbing so hard she could barely understand me. She came over immediately, holding me as I cried and questioned everything about my marriage. "I thought I knew him," I kept saying. "How could I have been so wrong?" The next morning, I woke up on the couch with Julie sleeping in the armchair nearby. For a split second, I hoped it had all been a nightmare, until the wave of nausea hit, reminding me that not only was my husband gone, but I was still very much pregnant. Julie made me toast and tea, insisting I eat something for the baby's sake. My hand drifted to my stomach. Whatever Chad had decided, this was still my child. I tried calling Chad throughout the day, but it went straight to voicemail. My text asking him not to shut me out went unanswered. By afternoon, I was feeling stronger, anger starting to replace the shock. I called my OB/GYN to schedule my first prenatal appointment. I was going to move forward, with or without him. That evening, I got a call from Chad's mother, Rebecca. The conversation was brief, but illuminating. She told me Chad had explained the situation to them and suggested I should give him time, because he was still too young for a family. When I pointed out he was 31, she brushed it off, saying he was focused on his career. Then came the real kicker. She hinted that I should consider options, clearly suggesting termination without directly saying it. I firmly told her I was keeping this baby, her grandchild, regardless of Chad's decision. The call ended with me shaking with anger, finally understanding where some of Chad's attitudes came from. His parents had always coddled him, treated him like he could do no wrong. The next few days passed in a blur. I went to work, trying to act normal despite feeling like my world had imploded. I contacted a lawyer to understand my options. I started researching single motherhood and childcare costs. I looked at my finances, calculating how I could make this work alone if I had to. Chad finally texted 3 days after leaving, not to ask how I was doing or to apologize, but to inform me he was staying at Vanessa's and would send money for bills. When I replied that we needed to talk in person, his response was that he needed space and wasn't ready to talk yet. A week passed, then 2. He came by the apartment once when I was at work to get more of his things. He left his keys on the counter with a note saying he'd paid rent through next month and would contact me about divorce after speaking with a lawyer. Divorce, just like that. I had my first prenatal appointment alone. When the technician did the ultrasound and I heard my baby's heartbeat for the first time, that fast, rhythmic, whooshing sound, I broke down crying. The technician probably thought they were tears of joy, not tears of grief for the family I thought we'd be. The baby measured right on track. They gave me a tiny printout of the ultrasound image, just a little bean-shaped blur, but already my child. I put it on the refrigerator when I got home, a reminder that no matter what happened with Chad, this little person was counting on me. 3 weeks after Chad left, his father Roland called me. Unlike Rebecca's cold approach, he at least asked how I was doing. When I told him honestly that I wasn't doing great after being abandoned for a younger woman and mentioned his wife suggesting abortion, he tried to smooth things over. He claimed Rebecca didn't mean it like that, and that they were just concerned about Chad's career and promotion prospects. He called my pregnancy unfortunate timing and explained that Chad just isn't in a place where he can be a father right now. I reminded Roland that I hadn't planned to be a single mother either, but adults deal with life's unexpected challenges. He offered financial help but made it clear that Chad needed to focus on his career and that he and Vanessa had a connection. After hanging up, I realized something important. I was utterly alone in this. Chad had chosen Vanessa. His parents had chosen him. It was just me and my baby now. But somehow, that realization was clarifying. I didn't have to wonder anymore. Didn't have to hope Chad would come around. I could start planning my life, our life, without the weight of uncertainty. I called Julie that night and told her I needed to move. There were too many memories in our apartment. She immediately offered her place until I found somewhere new. As I looked around the apartment we'd shared, I felt something unexpected, a tiny flicker of hope. Not for reconciliation, that bridge was thoroughly burned, but for the future, my baby's future. Whatever came next would be hard. I had no illusions about that. Single motherhood, divorce, rebuilding my life from scratch, none of it would be easy. But one thing I knew for certain, my child would never feel unwanted, not by me, and maybe that would be enough. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with the lawyer again to start divorce proceedings. Chad thinks he can just walk away? We'll see about that. I might be down right now, but I'm not out. Not even close. First update. Wow, I can't believe it's been a year since my last post. First, thank you to everyone who commented with advice and support. I read every single message, even if I couldn't respond to them all. Your words meant more than you know during those dark days. So much has happened, and yet somehow writing that sentence feels like an understatement. I have a son now, an actual tiny human who depends on me for everything. His name is Tiago. He's 8 months old, and despite everything, he's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Yesterday, I realized something that stopped me in my tracks while I was folding his impossibly small socks. Chad has never met him. Not once. Not when he was born, not for his first smile, not for his first Christmas, not ever. My son's father lives less than 30 minutes away, and he's a complete stranger to his own child. I guess I should start from where I left off. The divorce was finalized when I was 7 months pregnant. Chad didn't contest anything, which my lawyer said was unusual, but made everything move faster. The judge ordered reasonable child support based on Chad's income, which is something at least, though it's been spotty, more on that later. I moved out of our apartment and found a smaller 2-bedroom place closer to Julie. The rent is higher than I'd like, but it's in a decent school district, which I've learned is something you start thinking about way earlier than you'd expect. My dining room is now half nursery overflow, with a pack-and-play, bouncer, and what feels like a small toy store exploding across my living space. Marie Kondo would have a heart attack. Tiago was born on a Tuesday night after 19 hours of labor. Julie was my birthing partner, holding my hand and feeding me ice chips while I swore I couldn't do it. The nurses kept asking about the father, and I got tired of explaining, so I just started saying, he's not in the picture, which felt both true and like a massive understatement. Those first weeks were a blur of sleeplessness, nipple pain, sorry, TMI, and wondering if I was doing anything right. The night we came home, Tiago wouldn't stop crying, and I remember sitting on my bathroom floor at 3 a.m., also crying, Googling, why won't baby sleep on my phone while he wailed in my arms? I'd never felt so alone or so overwhelmed, but we survived. Day by day, we figured it out together, Tiago and I. I learned his cries. Hungry sounds different from tired, which sounds different from, I just want to be held. I discovered he loves being sung to, even though I can't carry a tune in a bucket. I watched his personality emerge bit by bit. He's observant, stubborn, wonder where he gets that from, and has a laugh that can light up the whole room. Work has been complicated. I went back when Tiago was 10 weeks old because I needed the money. My boss Anastasia has been surprisingly understanding, letting me work from home 2 days a week. Finding childcare nearly broke me, financially and emotionally. Daycare costs more than my rent, which seems absolutely insane, but it's the reality for so many of us. I found a place that doesn't require taking out a second mortgage, but it's still a huge chunk of my monthly budget. The financial stuff has been one of the hardest parts. Child support from Chad comes sometimes, but there's always an excuse when it's late. His car needed repairs. He had unexpected expenses. He's switching jobs. Last month, it was 2 weeks late because he and Vanessa were in Spain. I saw the pictures on Instagram before he bothered to respond to my texts about the missing payment. Speaking of social media, I made the mistake of checking his profiles a few months after Tiago was born. There they were, Chad and Vanessa, looking sun-kissed and carefree at some rooftop bar. No signs of sleepless nights or spit-up stained clothes in their world. I blocked them both after that. Julie says it's better for my mental health, and she's right. Julie has been my lifeline through all of this. She comes over with takeout when I'm too exhausted to cook, holds Tiago so I can take an actual shower, and never once complains when all I can talk about is baby poop consistency or sleep regressions. She even organized a small baby shower when I was 8 months pregnant, after Chad's friends all ghosted me. Funny how people pick sides so quickly. Chad's parents have been interesting. After initially supporting their son abandoning his pregnant wife, they had a change of heart once Tiago was actually born. I got a text from Rebecca about a month after he arrived, asking to see their grandson. I didn't respond right away, trying to figure out how I felt about it. Then came flowers, baby clothes, even a handwritten letter about how they'd love to be part of their grandson's life. I finally agreed to a short visit when Tiago was 4 months old. It was awkward, to say the least. Rebecca kept commenting on how much he looked like Chad as a baby, while Roland took about 50 photos on his phone. They brought expensive baby gifts and talked about starting a college fund. Not once did they mention their son's absence or apologize for their previous behavior. When they asked to take him for an overnight stay, I had to draw a hard line. No way was I letting my infant go anywhere without me, especially with people who had basically suggested I terminate my pregnancy a year earlier. That conversation didn't go well. Rebecca accused me of using Tiago to punish Chad, which was rich considering Chad had shown zero interest in meeting his son. That's the part I still can't wrap my head around. How do you know you have a child and just not care? Not wonder what they look like? How they're growing? If they're happy? Chad has sent money, sometimes, but has never once asked for a photo, a video, or a visit. It's like Tiago is an abstract concept to him, not a real person with his eyes and dimpled chin. I've tried to be the bigger person. When Tiago was born, I sent a simple text with his birth stats and a photo. No response. I set up a shared photo album online where I occasionally upload pictures, just in case Chad ever wants to see what he's missing. As far as I can tell, he's never opened it. For Tiago's first Christmas, I sent a holiday card with his photo to Chad's address. The envelope came back marked, "Return to sender." Meanwhile, life goes on. Tiago started daycare, caught every possible virus in his first month there, another fun surprise of parenthood nobody warns you about, and has since developed an immune system of steel. He's crawling now, pulling himself up on furniture and putting everything in his mouth. My apartment is baby-proofed to the extreme. I haven't seen my coffee table without corner protectors in so long, I've forgotten what it actually looks like. My daily routine has become a carefully choreographed dance of efficiency. Wake up at 5:30 a.m. before Tiago to shower and get dressed. Get him up, fed, and dressed by 7:15. Daycare drop-off by 8. Work until 5, rush to pick him up by 5:30. Paying the late fee on days when meetings run over. Home by 6 for dinner, bath, stories, and bedtime routine. Then a few precious hours to clean, do laundry, pay bills, and maybe watch half an episode of something on Netflix before falling asleep on the couch. Rinse and repeat. The hardest moments are the ones no one talks about. Like when Tiago had his first fever at 3 a.m., and I had to decide alone whether to take him to the ER, or when he says, "mama," but there's no data in his vocabulary because that person doesn't exist in his world. Or the daycare forms that ask for father's information, and I have to write NA while surrounded by other parents filling out both sections. But there are beautiful moments too. Morning cuddles when he wakes up happy and babbling, the way he reaches for me when I pick him up from daycare, his fascination with the ceiling fan, his absolute joy when splashing in the bath, the weight of him falling asleep on my chest, his breath warm against my neck. I'm not going to pretend it's easy. Being a single parent is the hardest thing I've ever done. There are days when I'm so tired I put the milk in the cabinet and the cereal in the fridge, days when I snap at customer service people over nothing because I'm running on fumes, days when I cry in the shower because it's the only place Tiago can't hear me. But I'm doing it. We're doing it. And strangely enough, I'm proud of that. Tiago's first birthday is coming up next month. Julie is helping me plan a small celebration. Nothing fancy, just a few friends, some cake, and probably more decorations than necessary because Julie gets carried away with Pinterest. I debated inviting Chad's parents, but decided against it after our last interaction. They still occasionally text asking to see him, but it's always on their terms, with no acknowledgement of how their son has abandoned his child. As for Chad himself, I'm not holding my breath for a card, let alone an appearance. Last I heard through mutual friends, he and Vanessa moved in together and got a dog. I guess that's the level of responsibility he's comfortable with. The kicker came last week. I finally got approved for a modest apartment in a slightly better area. It's nothing fancy, but it has a small yard where Tiago can play, and the schools are good. As I was signing the lease, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Rebecca saying they were having a family reunion next month and wanted to include their grandson. The text included a photo of Chad and Vanessa, arms around each other, looking perfectly happy. I stared at that photo for a long time. There was Chad, smiling, living his life as if his son doesn't exist. Something shifted in me in that moment. Not anger exactly, though there's still plenty of that. More like clarity. I've spent a year waiting for Chad to step up, to show even the slightest interest in his child. A year sending updates into the void. A year trying to be fair and reasonable despite everything. I texted Rebecca back. Tiago won't be attending. If Chad wants to meet his son, he knows how to reach me. but I'm done making excuses for him or pretending he's anything but absent by choice. Then I blocked her number too. Maybe that sounds harsh, but I'm done protecting Chad's image or his feelings. I'm done carrying the entire emotional load while he gets to live consequence-free. I'm done pretending for Tiago's sake that his father might suddenly become interested in his existence. The truth is, we're better off without someone who could so easily walk away. Tiago deserves people in his life who choose him, who show up for him, who love him unconditionally. I can't force Chad to be that person. So here we are, 1 year later, a single mom and her son against the world. It's not the life I planned, not even close. But looking at Tiago's sleeping face tonight, I realized something important. Sometimes the family you end up with isn't the one you expected, but it's still perfect in its own way. I don't know what the future holds. The divorce settlement included a clause about revisiting custody if Chad ever decides he wants to be involved, which honestly seemed like a joke at the time, but my lawyer insisted was standard. Part of me hopes he stays away forever. Another tiny part still can't believe he doesn't want to know his amazing son. For now, I'm focusing on what I can control. Building a stable home, creating happy memories, being both mom and dad as best I can, and maybe, just maybe, finding a way to trust again someday. But that's a problem for future Melissa. Present Melissa needs to finish the laundry and go to bed. Tiago will be up at 6 a.m. whether I'm ready or not. So that's my update. 1 year, one perfect baby boy, and 1 day at a time. Second update. It's been 4 years since my last update. I honestly didn't think I'd be posting here again, but something happened yesterday that I can't stop thinking about, and I needed to put it somewhere. Tiago just turned 5 last month. 5. I still can't believe my little baby is now this chatty kindergartner who knows all the planets in order and corrects my pronunciation of dinosaur names. Time is wild. Yesterday was his first day of kindergarten. I took the morning off work to walk him in, expecting the usual chaos of drop-off. What I wasn't expecting was to see Chad's friend Leroy in the school parking lot, dropping off his daughter. I froze for a second, but Tiago was tugging my hand, excited to see the classroom, so I pushed through it. After getting Tiago settled, only minor tears. From me, not him. I was heading back to my car when Leroy approached. I braced myself for awkwardness, but instead, he just asked how I was doing. We ended up getting coffee at the shop across from school, and that's when he dropped the bomb. Chad and Vanessa broke up 6 months ago. Apparently, she wanted kids, and he was still saying he wasn't ready. At 35, after stringing her along for years, she finally gave him an ultimatum, and he chose, well, not her. Chad's company downsized last year, and he's been struggling to find stable work. According to Leroy, he's been crashing on friends' couches while Vanessa keeps the apartment they shared. The perfect life he abandoned us for has completely fallen apart. I sat there stirring my coffee, not sure how to feel. There was no satisfaction, no serves him right moment, like I might have imagined years ago. Just a strange emptiness, like hearing about a character from a TV show I stopped watching seasons ago. What struck me most was realizing how completely different my life is now, compared to when Chad left. After years of juggling single motherhood and work, things have finally stabilized. I've been at the same company for 6 years now, and last year Anastasia promoted me to senior project manager. The raise meant I could finally afford to buy a small townhouse in a good school district. Nothing fancy, but it's ours, with Tiago's handprints painted on his bedroom wall, and a little garden where we grow tomatoes that never quite turn out right. Financial stability was hard-won. There were so many nights of spreadsheets and budget calculations weighing every expense. Child support from Chad eventually stopped completely around Tiago's 3rd birthday. After multiple missed payments, I filed with the enforcement agency, but Chad had changed jobs so many times it was like chasing a ghost. Eventually, I decided the stress of fighting for it wasn't worth it. I'd rather Tiago see me calm and present than anxious and angry over money we could manage without. The question I've been dreading started coming about a year ago. Why don't I have a daddy? Tiago asked while we were grocery shopping, completely out of nowhere. I'd prepared for this moment, read articles about age-appropriate explanations, but nothing prepares you for looking into those innocent eyes. I told him a simplified version of the truth, that his daddy wasn't ready to be a parent, but that didn't mean anything was wrong with Tiago. That sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt people, but I wanted and loved him enough for 2 parents. Those conversations never get easier. Each time Tiago notices another kid with their dad at the park or sees father-son activities at school, my heart breaks a little. But we've built our own traditions. Julie is still his favorite aunt, coming over for movie nights and teaching him card tricks. My parents drive up monthly to spend weekends with their grandson. We have our village, even without Chad. Then about 10 months ago, something unexpected happened. At a parent-teacher night at Tiago's preschool, I kept noticing this dad with kind eyes and a terrible dad joke t-shirt. I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right. His daughter Emma was in Tiago's class, and they'd become friends. I overheard him gently but firmly handling her meltdown over having to leave the classroom toys. And something about his patience caught my attention. Douglas, widowed father of Emma, makes homemade pizza on Fridays with dinosaur-shaped pepperoni, remembers Teacher Appreciation Week without reminders, doesn't mind when my son talks endlessly about space. It started with playdates. The kids were friends anyway, so it was natural. Then coffee while they played. Then texting about school announcements we'd both missed. Then dinner one night after Emma and Tiago's soccer practice ran late. Then more dinners, more texts, more conversations that stretched late into the evening after the kids were asleep. Douglas never rushed anything. He understood the package deal. Me and Tiago, always. He asked thoughtful questions about Tiago's interests, brought him books about stars after hearing about his space phase. The first time he fixed Tiago's wobbly bicycle seat without being asked, I nearly cried at the simple kindness of it. 6 months in, Douglas told me about losing Emma's mom to cancer when Emma was just a year old, how he'd been terrified of raising a daughter alone, how he'd kept her mom's photos everywhere so Emma would know her. The raw honesty of his grief and love made me trust him in a way I hadn't trusted anyone in years. We've been officially dating for 7 months now. The kids know we're special friends and seem genuinely happy about our blended playdates. Last month, Douglas and I had the talk about where this is going. Nothing dramatic, just sitting on my back porch after the kids were asleep, talking honestly about our hopes and fears. He wants to move forward together. So do I. We're taking it slow, but for the first time in 5 years, I'm allowing myself to picture a future with someone again. Meanwhile, Chad's parents have suddenly renewed their interest in Tiago. After years of sporadic texts and occasional gift cards on birthdays, Rebecca called last month asking if they could take him for a weekend. When I explained that wasn't going to happen after years of minimal contact, she got defensive, claiming they'd always wanted a relationship, but thought I was keeping them away. The truth is, they made barely any effort until recently. I wonder if Chad moving back in with them has anything to do with their sudden interest. Douglas asked last week if he could take Tiago fishing along with Emma next weekend. Something so simple. Yet it made my throat tight watching Tiago's excitement about learning to fish like real boys do. After Leroy's revelation yesterday, I checked Chad's Instagram for the first time in years. His carefully curated feed of exotic vacations and rooftop parties has been replaced with vague inspirational quotes about new beginnings and finding yourself. No mention of the son turning 5 just miles away. I closed the app feeling oddly at peace. 5 years ago, I was broken, terrified, and alone. Today, I have a career I'm proud of, a home I own, an amazing kid who astonishes me daily, and a partner who chooses us every day, not because he has to, but because he wants to. So that's where I am 5 years later. Not where I expected to be, but exactly where I'm meant to be. And Chad? His choices led him exactly where his choices would naturally lead. I can't even find it in me to be bitter anymore. That part of my life feels like a different timeline, one I stepped out of long ago. Third update, last Saturday started like any other. Pancake breakfast, then rushing to Tiago's soccer game. Douglas and I were huddled under an umbrella watching the blue lightning when Douglas nudged me. Is that someone you know? Across the field stood Chad. After 7 years of complete absence, my ex-husband was just watching our son play soccer. No warning, no heads-up text, nothing. When halftime came, Tiago ran over for water, excited about his defensive play. That's when I noticed Chad approaching us. Tiago spotted him too, asking who the stranger was. Before I could answer, Chad was standing there, awkwardly commenting on how big Tiago had gotten. I sent Tiago back to his team and confronted Chad. He admitted his mother had mentioned the soccer schedule. Of course, Rebecca. The sudden increase in contact from his parents made sense now. Douglas introduced himself, and I noticed Chad flinch slightly when he claimed the title of Tiago's father. I corrected him, biologically only. After some tense words, Chad asked if we could talk after the game. I reluctantly agreed to 20 minutes at the nearby coffee shop. Douglas took Tiago and Emma for Victory ice cream while I met with Chad. He'd ordered me a cappuccino, not knowing I'd switched to lattes years ago, a small detail that somehow highlighted how much had changed. Chad's story came in pieces. Therapy for a year, 8 months sober, moving back with his parents after breaking up with Vanessa. The most stunning admission was that he'd actually asked his parents to limit contact with Tiago because he couldn't handle the reminder of what he'd abandoned. Now he wanted to make things right and know his son. I told him plainly that Tiago wasn't the baby he walked out on, but a person with feelings and a life Chad knew nothing about. He acknowledged he couldn't just walk in and be dad, then asked about my relationship with Douglas. Something like pain crossed his face when I told him Douglas had been more of a father than he ever was. I agreed to consider a supervised meeting with strict conditions. I would be present, it would be brief, and if he disappeared again, that was it forever. 3 days later, after talking with Douglas and our family therapist, I arranged a meeting at a park. Telling Tiago was harder than expected. His questions were heartbreaking. Why his father wanted to see him now, whether Douglas would come too, and if his biological father would like him. He decided to wear his soccer jersey, so he knows I'm good at soccer. The meeting wasn't terrible. Chad brought a Lego soccer field set, and they built it together while I watched from nearby. I noticed genetic similarities I'd forgotten. The same concentration face, the same eye crinkle when they smiled. Over the next 2 weeks, we had several similar supervised meetings. Then Chad called asking to take Tiago to a movie alone. I refused immediately. 3 weeks versus 7 years? Not happening. He seemed to accept this, suggesting we all three go instead. Before I could respond, he showed up at our house with his parents, unannounced. Roland and Rebecca pushed forward with talk about moving forward as a family, while Chad mumbled that he'd told them this wasn't the way. I sent them home, but Chad asked to speak with me alone. That's when he dropped it. I still love you, Melissa. I never stopped. The audacity was breathtaking. He suggested that despite my relationship with Douglas, we should consider reuniting as Tiago's real parents because our son deserved that chance. I asked him to leave, saying I needed to think. When Douglas came downstairs, I told him about Chad's declaration. Douglas couldn't hide his concern about Chad being Tiago's biological father, but I reassured him I was exactly where I wanted to be. Later that night, Chad texted that he meant what he said about wanting another chance with our family. I stared at those words, feeling an odd mix of anger and pity. The man who walked out when I needed him most wasn't someone I could ever trust again. Tomorrow, I'll call Chad to set clear boundaries about his role in Tiago's life. as a biological father only, not as my partner. Some bridges, once burned, stay ash.